Today we come to the conclusion of these three chapters on the subject of Christian liberty. Now, while the focus on meats offered to idols might make us think that the teaching is remote and of minor significance, the fact that Paul deals with it at length and also deals with it in a whole chapter in Romans chapter 14, it indicates that the principles are very important in Christian life. In fact, I would argue that they are of fairly wide application nowadays and very relevant in the modern individualistic society that we live in. So let's read the conclusion of the subject in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 from the second half of verse 29 to chapter 11 verse 1. For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? For if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of for that for which I give thanks? Whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of God. Give none offence neither to the Jews, nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of God, even as I please all men in all things, not seeking mine own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved. Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. A common phrase in everyday life, mainly expressed by children but not exclusively, is, why should I? And I think that that idea is contained in the two questions at the start of our reading. Why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience in verse 29? And why am I evil spoken of for that for which I give thanks in verse 30? Now, the first question is about why my liberty should be determined by someone else's conscience. And the second question is why I should be criticized by someone else for exercising my liberty if I've received the food after giving thanks to God. Now, these might be questions raised by those who wanted to assert their liberty regardless. Well, the question is why indeed? Maybe the best response to that would be to quote these words, "For even Christ pleased not himself," from Romans 15 verse 3. Words that were written by Paul immediately after he dealt with this same subject in Romans 14. So they actually are very applicable. So in these verses, Paul offers two answers to these why questions. The first is Godward. Whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of God. And that's in verse 31. We must be motivated first and foremost in whatever course of action we pursue by the glory of God. This is what should mold our behaviour. If I want to exercise my liberty, I need to ask myself, taking everything into account, whether what I am going to do will be for the glory of God. Earlier in the letter, Paul reminded us that we must glorify God in your body, verse 20 of chapter 6, and that applies here too. The second answer to the why questions is manward. Give none offence neither to the Jews, nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of God, in verse 32. We ought always to act in a way that is directed not to cause offence, to act in a way that will not erect an obstacle for others, that will not undermine our usefulness in serving God, with Jew, Gentile, or Christian, not seeking mine own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved, verse 33. In a world that is obsessed with rights and entitlement, we as Christians should stand out as those who take account of others and who live with the well-being of others in our hearts. That's the way that Paul lived. It's the way that the Lord Jesus lived. And that is why Paul concludes the subject with these words, "Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ," chapter 11 verse 1. Now that's a challenge that we all need the grace of God to live up to. And as we enter 2025, may that be our motto for the year, or let's strive to do that even today.